I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net in New York, and we have Gary Shapiro, the President and CEO of the Consumer Electronics Association in New York, and Dirk Van Dyke on the other line, Chief Equity Strategist at Zacks.com, joining us from Dayton, Ohio. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, first up, let's start with you, Mr. Shapiro.
We have a declaration of innovation we are announcing today and promoting in conjunction with the 4th of July holiday. And it recognizes the fact that our nation's future is something which is in somewhat jeopardy because we are struggling economically and financially. And the way to get out of that is to grow, and growth comes from innovation. So innovation should be our number one national economic strategy. And it basically asks the Americans to sign up and say, this is important, doesn't cost government spending, and it's focused on the fact that we believe as Americans that we are the most innovative country in the world, and that innovation depends upon getting the best and the brightest people here, trade, getting spectrum that we need for our wireless devices, and solving this deficit problem.
Okay, I want to cover on the broadband network issue. I mean, you have several topics there. This morning, Telstra Corporation, Australia's largest telecommunications company, reached an 11 billion Australian dollar or 12 billion US dollars deal with the government to participate in the rollout of a fiber optic network, broadband network that will be among the world's fastest. This will deliver broadband speeds of 100 megabit per second to 90% of Australian homes, schools, and businesses. Where is the U.S. on the national broadband network?
Well, the United States actually has a broadband policy, which I think is a positive one, and it's focused on the fact that Americans should get broadband, period. But what that means is, in my view, is competition between different broadband providers. So while fiber optic broadband is wonderful in a wired world, the fact is increasingly Americans are relying on wireless. And even when you have that wired network, the last few hundred feet to the home is tough to get and expensive to get wired. So wireless is very, very important. And what we really want, though, is we want competition among all broadband providers, wired and wireless. And that drives down the cost of the consumer, and it actually gives you choice, which is very important. And it makes everything else seem somewhat less important in terms of some of the debates about net neutrality and the other debates.
Okay, so we're going to be focusing on the wired and wireless access. Cable companies and some telecom providers are planning metered internet access. Isn't that going to stifle internet growth for U.S. websites and internet usage? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't really believe the cable companies are going to start cutting out websites. And the solution to that really is if you have a choice of broadband providers, a real choice, and you know what they're doing, and you can get out of a contract if they change what they're doing, then certainly they are not going to jeopardize their customer base by restricting access to certain websites. So net neutrality to me is a short-term problem if we solve the problem of getting consumers a whole bunch of wireless broadband choices. It's very important not only for new websites and companies, it's important for innovation. And that's why we're so focused on innovation as a national policy and priority, and we're pushing this concept of consumers signing on declareinnovation.com.
And Dirk, do you have questions for Gary?
Well, one thing that I would take a little issue with what Gary was saying, I think a lot of what he's saying makes an awful lot of sense, but when he says that innovation doesn't require any more government spending, I would rather strenuously disagree. If it weren't for government spending, we wouldn't have the semiconductor, we wouldn't have the internet, and we wouldn't have about half the major medical breakthroughs, all of which are funded by the basic research at places like DARPA, the Defense Department Research Agency, and the National Institutes of Health. And I would say that the rather draconian cutbacks in domestic spending that tends to hit this sort of stuff that doesn't have a real specific constituency because the benefits are sort of diffused to the entire society down the road, and it's hard to say exactly what specific innovations or technologies will come of these things. That it sort of are easy targets when Congress is looking to cut. So I do think that there is a strong role for the federal government in encouraging innovation. And on the net neutrality issue, I don't think it's an issue where the cable companies will totally block a given website, but they very well could have, the premium service that goes to the big cable companies or big websites who might, pay a bit more, an eBay or something like that, which would run much faster than sort of what a mom and pop website would be running at. So I do think it's a bit of an issue, and that net neutrality is a good thing. But I agree that it's highly unlikely that the cable companies would do a complete block. It would sort of be just a differential in the speeds that you can access the different websites. The U.S. is kind of lagging behind in terms of both on the wired and wireless side in terms of access and speed, which is a bit disappointing. I mean, we're still making pretty rapid progress in any absolute terms, but a lot of other countries are making more rapid progress than we are.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I think the reality is that our country is verging on bankruptcy, and it's not going to be the government there spending. So you have to have a strategy where you are focusing on growth, and growth comes from innovation, and innovation is not going to come from government choosing winners and losers. Instead, we have to deal with the fact that there's those who want taxes raised, there are those who want spending cuts, but there's a stalemate now. So you focus on what you can focus on. What we can focus on is the fact that we have to acknowledge that innovation is very important. Innovation comes from private business. It doesn't come from government, with all respect. And the fact is that we will, if we have a strategy of getting the best and the brightest, focusing on trade, cutting the deficit, and getting additional spectrum, we will do what we've done with the Internet world and all the other companies from DreamWorks to Hollywood, and that we will continue to innovate and create and just keep the government out of the way. We're not going to be in a position of asking the government to give us money, and that's not something we need to do, and it's not something that's even a political reality or feasible today. So I'm dealing with a world that's real, and Washington is real, and that's an important focus for our 2,000 companies that are members of ours and that are the world's leading technology companies.
But, I mean, the Internet would not exist at all if it weren't for DARPA.
And you're going back 30 years to talk about that. And certainly we've honored Robert Kahn and others who have created the Internet, and they're important in so many other ways. But I'm talking about reality. Yeah. I do have to go, and thank you so much for listening to my views.
Great. Closing statements, everybody? We're good to go?
Sign up at declareinnovation.com. I think I fully agree that growth is really the only answer to our problems. I've got a little bit of a disagreement about how we get to that growth and innovation. I think what Mr. Shapiro is saying are all extremely good steps. I'm not sure if they alone are sufficient.
Gary Shapiro, Dirk Van Dyke, thanks for joining us, and I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net.